This is GGB with no co-host Poppers today. I'm just so used to saying it, but let's go over what happened yesterday and who I'm going to pick to be upset today. Unfortunately, I didn't get a half a point or even a point yesterday thanks to Clemson, but I'm still sitting at 2.5 points. There's not likely going to be an upset today. That could get me to 3 points, and then I'm very close to 4. So let's go over what happened real quick yesterday. Nothing big happened in the Big 12, as many of you know. The only big game that really occurred yesterday within the Big 12 was Kansas State taking on Baylor. Baylor absolutely wiped the floor with Kansas State. So Kansas State still sits at 1-8 in conference. Baylor's still undefeated. And so Kansas State stayed at 9, Baylor stayed at 1. So nothing huge happened there. In the ACC, some things flip-flopped a bit. The top 3 are the same, with Virginia, Florida State, and Virginia Tech all 1, 2, and 3. Now, UNC and Louisville switched positions since Clemson got a pretty big win over Louisville last night. And so, therefore, UNC moves to the 4 spot, and Louisville falls to 5. Now, Clemson moved to 4 and 4, which moved past a team like Georgia Tech. They were behind. So Clemson's getting back in there. Another win. They could move past Duke and Pitt. So there's definitely some possibilities here. I could see them getting within that number 6 in a week. So in the Big East, nothing huge happened except for this. Creighton beat Seton Hall, right? That was an upset I picked. Seton Hall didn't pull it off, even though it looked like they were in a good position to win it with not much time remaining, but unfortunately it didn't work out for them, right? So UConn was able to pass Seton Hall for 3rd place, and now Seton Hall sits in 4th place. Plenty of time to come back from that Seton Hall, but your chances of winning the Big East are shrinking every single time you lose. Big Ten, nothing huge happened. Again, Wisconsin and Ohio State were able to pull it off, although Ohio State was very much in question for most of the game. Penn State played a hell of a basketball game, and they're starting to look like a team. I'd like to talk about Penn State for a little bit. They're starting to look like a team that's at the bottom of the conference, but I would not want to play. They're a scary team right now to play. If you look at a team like Penn State, they're scrappy. They're scrappy players, and that's what's interesting about the team. Harris actually been coming on as recently, but yeah, Lundy's almost impossible to guard. Like, that guy is legitimately becoming one of the best people in the conference. Brockington's terrifying. When Wheeler's on defense and healthy, he's amazing. Sessum's a great 6th man off the bench. Myron Jones, when he's on point, he's going to shoot some threes and he's going to nail them. So this Penn State team, each of the people have a real purpose. And it switches from game to game who you can rely on. Lundy and Brockington both had insane games. The problem was Myron Jones didn't really help them out, which is why they lost this game. Plus, no Sesums for this game. Miles Dredd was coming off a pretty significant injury, so he only scored like 6 points or something like that. And Wheeler actually hurt himself. So really, you had 2 guys that weren't 100% healthy. And that's why I'd like to talk to Penn State. Like, what the heck are you doing, Penn State? Why do you have Wheeler on the court on the last offensive possession, or you're down by 2 points? It makes absolutely zero sense, right? Because he's not normally offensively productive. He's great defensively. That's why he's on the court. He's the Andre Iguodala of Penn State. He's not great offensively, but man, his defense is legendary. Why would you have him in on the last possession? Especially when Brockington is on the bench. I understand he has 4 fouls, but what are you really risking there? I mean, the worst thing you can do is a charge, right? I would sure put Brockington out of the game, but like, it's your last offensive position. If you don't score there anyways, it's all over. So it doesn't make any sense to me with that last play call, but as they start to get more healthy, they're a team that I think is going to become a little bit more scary, and especially near the bottom of the Big Ten. With a win, they could move past Maryland and Northwestern in a day. They could hop 2 spots in a day. The goal is, if you're Penn State, get up to 10, which right now you're sitting at 13. Hopping 2 spots would get you to 11. 11's not a bad spot to be either, because you played Nebraska first week, right? So the goal is to not be in that 13 slot, because you have to play a tough team in like Northwestern or something. You don't want to play a tough team like Northwestern. You want to play an easy team like Nebraska. Nebraska's an easy win every week. There's 13 teams that can beat you any given day in the Big Ten. Oh, 12 teams, I guess, since you're one of the teams. So you got to work. You have to be able to. So Wisconsin, I'd be nervous. Wisconsin beat Maryland, so they stay in the 3 spot. Penn State lost, they stay in the 13 spot. Ohio State beat Penn State, they stay in the 5 spot. The only real thing that happened was Maryland dropped from right below Rutgers, which was ninth. They dropped one spot behind Michigan State to 10th. That's all that really happened in the Big Ten yesterday. So let's get to what is happening today in basketball. We have 3 ranked teams. Let's go over them. At 7 o'clock, we have TCU, which is sitting at 9-5, traveling to number 15, Kansas at 10-5. Kansas favored by 14.5 points on ESPN+. Kansas has defeated TCU the last 16 times they've played, so not great for TCU. So what would happen if each team won? So if Kansas wins and TCU falls to 2-5, which gives Kansas State at least a shot, even though they've lost 7 straight, to move up at least one spot past TCU, right? Kansas would move to 5-4, and this is the only real thing. This is the only outcome. If Kansas beats TCU, this is the only thing that really changes. So they move to 5-4. They pass Oklahoma State and Texas Tech and become 5th in the conference. Which you want to be in the top half of the conference. It's obviously the most ideal place to be in, especially in the good conferences like the Big East, Big 12, Big 10, ACC, right? You want to be in that top half because that gives you at least a likely shot at the playoffs, right? March Madness. That's all you need is a chance. So TCU, on the other hand, if they win, they move to 3-4. Kansas falls to 4-5. So it no longer go down to the tiebreaker of overall record. Kansas would just be automatically in 7th place, right? So TCU, that would put you 1 game behind Kansas, which is pretty important, especially when you're TCU, only won 2 in conference games, but you have a pretty good out-of-conference record that puts you in this position at 9-5, right? So if TCU is able to upset Kansas, then nothing really changes in the Big 12. If Kansas holds on to beat TCU, they're able to rise to the 5 spot, right? In the American Conference, which is what we have going on at 8 o'clock, we have number 6, Houston, which is sitting at 13-1, traveling to Tulane at 6-4. Now, Houston's favored by 17 points. Houston has really looked like a top 5 basketball team and will likely be in the top 5 since Texas lost this week to Oklahoma. It's on ESPN 2, by the way. Houston has allowed under 60 points, which means they're almost giving up no points for 4 straight games. They're playing some fantastic defense. Houston honestly looks like one of the better teams in the entire NCAA, and I'll be interested to see what happens when they face great teams moving forward. They have that loss at Tulsa, which isn't great, but let's see what happens with a win and a loss for each team. So let's say, by some miracle, Tulane pulls off the upset. They move to 2-4 in conference. That still doesn't pass UCF. Wait, actually, that does pass UCF. They move up 1 spot to pass UCF, which has a 2-5 in conference record. Houston would fall to 8-2 in conference, 13-2 overall. Still, Memphis and Wichita State and SMU, teams like that, still couldn't overcome them because the best team sitting in 2nd place in the American Conference is Memphis right now with 5-2 in conference record. Still an 8-2 in conference record is a better record because they've played more games overall than Memphis has. With the win, obviously, Houston stays in the 1 spot, moving to 9-1 in conference. It's looking less and less likely, especially the way Houston's playing, that you're going to be able to catch Houston to win the American Conference in the regular season. Now, if Tulane was to lose, they'd fall to 1-5 with a 6-4 record, which means they would fall 2 spots behind Cincinnati and East Carolina into last place in the American Conference. So that's what would happen with the win and loss for each team. At 8 o'clock, we have our last game, number 1 Gonzaga traveling, which is sitting at 15-0, traveling to San Diego, which is at 2-6. Now, obviously, Gonzaga's favored at 28.5 points in this game. So let's see what happens with a win and loss for each team. So let's say, by some absolute miracle, San Diego is able to pull off the upset against Gonzaga, even though they're 1-3 in conference. Fact is, you're not going to be able to pass anyone, even with that. You sit at 2-3, same record as St. Mary's, which they hold a tiebreaker based on a record. So San Diego wouldn't move out of that 8th spot. Wait, no, did my math incorrectly. 9 spot, they're sitting 9th in conference. So, obviously, if you're St. Mary's, you'd like to try and get closer. I mean, if you're San Diego, you'd like to try to get closer to St. Mary's. But obviously, if you're Gonzaga, you keep going. Even with the loss, it was still at 6-1, still first place in the conference, ahead of BYU, Santa Clara, Pepperdine. So it's interesting to watch. I don't think San Diego is going to pull off this upset, but if it was to happen, nothing would change. With a loss, nothing would change. So nothing changes in the conference regardless of a win or a loss. But San Diego would move a little bit closer to St. Mary's. And really, that's what you really want to do at this point of your... Like, if you're a fan of a team that's probably not going to make it based on their own merits, you have to put yourself in a great position to go on a run in the conference tournament. And which means canceling the conference tournament would absolutely be one of my least favorite things in the world, right? Because conference tournaments are what make March Madness different than other conferences. Even if you stink for most of the regular season, you still have a shot to make the playoffs, which is what is amazing. What makes college basketball more fun than, let's say, the NFL, the NBA, college football, right? You could stink during the regular season and then finally get it going at the end of the year, put on a run, and make the playoffs. That's always what you're hoping for. But anyways, I cutting conference tournaments would absolutely suck, and I think that's a bad decision by the NCAA if they do decide to do that. But who does GGB think is going to be upset today? Personally, I'm going to go with the team that has the lowest spread, and I think it's Kansas. The fact is, I don't 100% believe in TCU, but the fact is, I've seen a lot more out of Houston and Gonzaga in recent weeks, a lot more heart than I've seen out of Kansas. Kansas obviously not doing well. They're on a 3-game losing streak, right? So Kansas is obviously not playing their top-level game. Obviously, this could be a turnaround. You could look at it like that. If you're a Kansas fan, this is a great chance to turn this whole thing around for you. But you know, if I'm going to pick a team that I have to go against, it's going to be a team in a slump, right? And that's what I'm going to go with. Anyways, this is GGB saying adios, amigos, and go Horned Frogs.